then came the tares among the wheat. In that moment, spirit became matter, flesh became a vessel. Self-will and self-seeking began a lusting after sin and impurity. And man, created to be king over nature, became its slave. A master, conquered and fettered. And sin brought him and his descendants to us. And we began our forever mission to destroy you. He made you in his image, but we remade you in ours.
Welcome to Outside the Box. Tonight it's just me, Nicodemus, aka the Motivational Inspirationist, aka Ari. You can find me on Facebook at AriML Peoples. You can also find me on Fanbase as the Motivational Inspirationist, or just maybe it's Motivational Inspirationist. And you could also find me on YouTube at the Motivational Inspirationist. So thank you so much for tuning in. So it's not going to be long. It's just something I kind of happened upon. So I was watching this clip from the psychological thriller Nefarious. And when I tell you, it was deep as fuck. So basically the clip from Nefarious is where a psychologist is talking to a man, or should I say a demon, not spelled the way you see in the Christian Bible. Those that know, it's spelled differently, okay? So he calls the psychologist James. I haven't seen the whole movie yet, but just from the little clip that I watched, it struck me how this touches on human condition and consciousness itself. And so what I mean by that is this. The demon, I want to kind of like expand your mind. I want you to, from what you heard about demons, I want to take it a step further to show how it shows up in human condition, right? And so what I mean by this is that the demon isn't just a character in a story, right? The demon is almost symbolic of something we see every day. The man who worships false prophets. And what exactly is a false prophet? Or who is a false prophet? Or what does it look like? What does it feel like? What's the experience of false prophets, right? And so, you know the type. They put their faith in things like proximity to skin color, proximity to wealth, safety, or so-called better neighborhoods, better schools, and opportunities, right? But here's the kicker. The constant pursuit of better often comes at the cost of their free will. And I'm going to say that again. When we are in the pursuit of better, which is nothing wrong with that. You should, ought to, want to, if you love yourself, if you respect yourself, and if you want good things for your life. However, let me just go a little bit deeper. It often comes at the cost of their free will, right? And so society or religion tricks people into believing that they're living by a certain standard. They've actually stopped thinking for themselves, right? They just kind of give their will over to, this esoteric being that many millions of people have for many millions of years. And I don't think that you shouldn't, have a faith practice. However, when you give over your free will, you kind of don't think for yourself. And that's where conditioning takes place. That's what we're seeing currently in today's administration. That's what we're seeing. And we have seen for the last, the last 500, 600, 700 years, even longer than that. But what we can actually trace back and what we know has been the history of this country, the history of things that humans have even dealt with before the inception of this country, human conditions, right? And so they've kind of given up their power to challenge the box they've been in, or they've been placed in. And in doing so, we create our own personal hell, a life that looks good on the surface, but feels empty underneath. And so I wanted to kind of talk about, so in Nefarious, the psychologist asked, is heaven or hell or any of it a place? Or is it a state of being? And so the daemon asks, answers and responds and says, well, it's both, right? So as many of you know, I practice Nichiren Buddhism, and we believe it to be a state of being, right? So it's very interesting to see the response, not that there is any linkage in between the two, but practices where there's more acceptance of free thinking leaves room for these types of conversations without being told, you're blasphemous for thinking outside the box or questioning that which has been the dogma, right? And so I want to talk about heaven, hell, and everything in between. And so, the question is going to be, what if heaven and hell aren't places we go after we die, but states of being we experience right now? And so I'm asking that question because I believe that, but I want to open it up to those who may not think that way. And I want to say, I want you to kind of open your mind. So, heaven is like those moments when we feel aligned, joyful, and at peace. When life feels like it flows. Hell, though, that's the grief, the sadness, the depression, and the deep despair that often people feel when they're experiencing these challenges. It pulls us down, right? And so when we feel disconnected from ourselves and others, typically that's a state of hell. But the truth is we're not stuck in one or the other. And it's not an either or. There's many life conditions, but for this particular conversation, I want to stick to the two because this was the thing I found very interesting about this clip. So these are states that we move through, right? Sometimes daily, sometimes moment by moment, sometimes minute by minute. And each one has a lesson if we're open to it. So grief shows us the depth of love we're capable of, right? Sadness reveals where we are out of alignment, or anger or frustration. We may be out of alignment with something. Depression forces us to slow down and question the life we've built. And hope? Hope is what reminds us that there's always another side to the story. So when we're in the state of being of depression or sadness or grief, what brings us towards the light is the hope that it has to be better than this. So I'm going to say it again. Hope is what reminds us there's always another side to the story. It's the light at the end of the tunnel that keeps us going. Like consciousness and free will. It's like at the center of all of this is our consciousness, and it's our ability to choose how we move through these states. So the clip from Nefarious reminded me of the battle between light and dark that exists in all of us. Light, dark, and everything in between. It's not just about demons and angels. It's about our choices. And so are we going to stay stuck in the illusion of better, giving our power away? Or are we going to reclaim our free will and live in alignment with our truth? Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have to practice whatever, religion you practice, but are you more aligned to the truth of who you are and this practice that you're practicing? Are you able to be your most authentic self when you're practicing these religions and these practices? And I know a lot of religions, not naming anyone in particular, but many of them don't allow for that type of freedom of expression. And that's where the lack of questioning comes from. When you start to question, it's like, well, you're a free thinker. Yeah, I am a free thinker. You should be able to be a free thinker and go to church, go to the masjid, go to temple, go to, I don't want to get it wrong, where Jews tend to go to worship. I'm sorry, don't remember at the moment. The synagogue, where the Buddhist gets down and there's so many different sects of religions. the way that they do things? Does it allow you to have your free will and live in alignment with your truth? And so these are the questions that I want to ask. Do you believe heaven and hell are places? Or do you think there's something we create through our choices and perceptions? Or do you think it's a bit of both? How often do you question the things you've been taught to believe about success, safety, and happiness? Or, for that matter, anything that you've been given? I often wonder when let me tell a personal story. I grew up with a silent generation who's more like a baby boomer. I also was born at at the end of an era of Gen X, but was raised more millennial, right? I'm a Gen Xer at heart for sure, but I'm also super open-minded, where I find a lot of Gen Xers if they tend to be on the older side, unfortunately, they tend to be like their baby boomer parents. And I'm not saying all. I'm saying if this shoe fits, then you have to wear it and not be mad at me. I'm just the messenger. But I'm open, you know what I mean? And so with that being said, it's like my mother had these idealisms and this religion. And I used to look at her and ask her, like, my mom is 35 years older than me. I asked her, I'm like, Ma, where you get your religion from? She was like, well, it was passed down to me. And I'm like, you never questioned? You just did what they told you to do? And she was like, yeah. And it blew my mind because I've never been there. I questioned. And poor woman, she wasn't ready for me. You know what I mean? Like, she just was not ready for me because she's silent generation, raised as a baby boomer. They seen and been through it all. Not saying we haven't, but they went through some major human consciousness shifts. They dealt with their parents who were slaves, or who were, in other parts of the world where they had famine and sickness and war-torn countries and the lot of things that humans deal with, right? It boggles my mind at sometimes the way she thinks, but I understand because she was raised completely different. Generation X, we really had the ability, the ones of us that are different from our parents, and we do question the dogma and are ready to go to bat and rebel for a cause. How often do you question the things you've been taught? Not just about success, not just about safety, and not just about happiness. How often do you question, especially with everything that's going on right now? The reason why we are as humans, in my deeply held beliefs, is that so many of us have been indoctrinated into a system that we refuse to question. We've been indoctrinated into beliefs that over the long haul become actions that become a part of our societal norms, that become a part of the way culturally that people act and do things, that may be the same or different. And that's what all makes us beautiful, right? Because we do different things. So, my next question, what lessons have you learned from your darkest moments? Have they made you stronger? Or are you still working through them? Have they made you stronger? Or are you still working through them? And how do you bring yourself back to hope and joy when life feels overwhelming? And in those moments that you can't bring yourself back to joy and hope and life feels overwhelming, do you allow yourself to process, or do you do something to get away from that uncomfortable feeling? And so I'll close there, and I'm going to say this. At the end of the day, we're all moving through this spectrum of being. Heaven, hell, grief, sadness, hope, joy, and so many more conditions, which I will probably do a part 2. They're all part of the human experience. But the power lies in our awareness to what we can change. When we stop chasing those illusions and start embracing the lessons in each moment, that's when we find true freedom. So I haven't watched the movie, but that's what the clip gave me. And so after this, I'm actually going to watch the movie and see what else it brings up for me. But I wanted to give you that. And I hope whoever listens, they get something from it. And let's dialogue. I love y'all. Peace, peace.